Bright Beauty. Every student matters.
Hello and welcome back to our English class. We have been doing different topics in our grammar, and today I am coming to you with a composition. We know that composition is also a part of our English, and today in this composition we have so many topics, but the first thing that I have chosen for us today will be letters. We all know what is a letter writing. You might have wrote letters to your friends or you might not even have done that, but we know the purpose of a letter, isn't it? We all know why a letter is written. It is used to pass on a message to somebody, or it is used to write our views to a person or to a friend. That is what we call it as letter. You will find this in page number 97 and the following pages in our English grammar textbook. And as I've said, we know that English is a very vast subject. When I say English, it can be prose, it can be poetry, it can be grammar, it can be composition, and so on. And composition comes under our English language. It is the same all over the language, right? It may be Hindi, it may be another language that you are studying, but all these subjects comes under language. And today we have chosen a topic from our grammar book, that is composition, and the subtopic that we will be discussing is letters. So, I've just given you the definition of what letter writing is. It is a means of communication by which the messages are conveyed from one person to another. I repeat, I want you to read the definition along with me. It is a means of communication by which the messages are conveyed from one person to another. And it is also given from one place to another. Okay, one person to another, and also from one place to another. That is what we have to know. And these days, letter writing has been slowly losing its usage, but that does not mean that it is not important anymore. Even if you have your mobile phones, even if you send mails and messages from the computers, we know that for any official works, we should write a letter. And that is why we cannot say that letter writing is running out of use as long as we are using that in our official matters. For example, in order to write an application to your principal, you cannot just go and say it with your mouth, or you cannot just give a phone call to your head teacher, to your headmaster, or to your principal. Even if you can do that, that is not the proper way. So what we do is we write applications to the heads of institutions or maybe to offices. You might also have heard about how people write job application letter. In order to get a job, be it in the private sector or the public sector, government sector, we know that it is a must for us to write our letter, application letter. You cannot just type a message to your headmaster, you cannot just type a message to the director of a department and say, please give me that job, isn't it? That is something that is very casual, and no heads will accept that kind of messages from you. That is why letter writing, though not much in use in a casual ways, it is very highly and demanding still in the official sector. That is why as a student, it is important for you, it is important for us to learn how to write a letter. The thing that worries a teacher, okay, language teachers are getting worried because letter writing has been running out of track, or maybe let's say it is losing its importance to the students, and the students are misunderstanding because they have so many well-developed technologies like your phones, maybe your computers. You can send your emails, you can write your letters and pass it to someone very easily, and that does not mean that you can stop writing a letter, because you need to know, and students are forgetting the importance, because when it comes to the practical world, you still need to know that even if you want to get something from the office, or even if you want some help from others, you still need to write a letter. And there are two main categories of letters. It can be so many letters, but two broad categories. Here we see the first one is informal letter, okay? The first letter that we see is informal letter. Informal letters are the letters that we write to our friends, you write to your parents, You write to your relatives, to your near and dear ones. People exchange letters in so many different ways, and we call those casual letters as informal letter. I repeat, informal letters are the letters that you write to your parents. Imagine that you are studying in a place which is far away from your parents. So what do? You have to write a letter. Or if you go to a place where you do not have proper network connection, you have to write a letter. And few years back, not very long ago, letters were so much in use that if you are a student studying away from your parents, you have to write letters to your parents. If there is anything that you need for school, or if there's anything that you need for yourself, you have to write a letter, because you cannot make a phone call. Or if you don't not own a phone, that is the easiest and the cheapest means of communication, though not the fastest. And then formal letters are the letters, as I've said, that you write to the heads of institutions. Head of institution can be your principal, it can be your head teacher, it can be your headmistress or whoever, but the one who is in charge of the school can be your head of institution. It can either be the head of a department, okay, or it can even be business letters. If you want to order some particular products, imagine that you are a businessman who runs a retail shop and you want to order some particular books. If you have a bookstore, you have to write it to the publishers, or maybe you have to write it to a business officer, demanding or asking him to send you the required amount of books that are required for your bookstore. It can be even to the business firms, editors of newspapers. I'm sure you have heard about letters to editors of newspaper. You may write a letter to the editor requesting him to publish a particular news item. And when you write a letter, we will be discussing all these things in detail later, but I want you to know, when you write a letter to an editor, you cannot demand him that the particular problem should be tackled by him or should be handled by him. There are so many students who get confused. They write letters to the editors in case there is a problem that is caused because of the poor road conditions in your colony or in your village. If you write a letter to the editor and ask him to repair the road, I know that is not his work. So you should know that your letters to editors should not be requesting him to come and tackle that particular problem in your area or in your village, but it is a letter that you request him to publish this particular news item in his newspaper, so that the general public will get to know, or the concerned authority will get to know about it and take necessary actions. That is the main purpose of letters to the editors. It is requesting him to publish certain news items or your letter in the newspaper, so that the concerned authority or the concerned person will get to know about it, will be aware about it. Okay? So that is the main purpose of writing letter to the editors of newspapers. Okay, let's discuss the format of a formal letter writing. Okay? Format of a formal letter writing. We all know that in writing there is always a certain format that you have to follow, be it in letter writing, be it in essay writing, or any kinds of writing. For example, if you start a sentence with a small letter, you know that your sentence is incorrect, isn't it? If you start a sentence with a small letter, that is not going to be acceptable. We all have been taught from our lower classes, from our class AB in fact, or if not AB, at least by class 1, you started learning that we should always start a sentence with a capital letter. That is the format. You should always give a full stop at the end of a sentence. That is also a kind of format that you have been learning in your lower classes. We know that you have to give an inverted comma, quotation mark, if you want to quote a particular person's speech, which we have in our class. We have the topic of speech in our class too. So we will also discuss about that after some days. But here, in a format of a letter writing, the first and foremost thing that you have to know is the writer's address. Who is the writer? It's you, it's me. The person who is writing the letter is called the writer. So you have to give your own address. I've just given you an example of how to write your address. Maybe this is the name of the road, that is Sirin Road. I've just given you an imaginary road, okay? Syrian Road, house number 1991. Mentioning your house number is always very important, especially for persons or for people living in the cities. Unless you give your proper address, your letters will be very difficult to reach you. For villages, maybe your neighbors know who you are, your neighbors know you, that's why they may pass on the letter to you, even if the address is not very specific or particular. But for a person living in the towns and cities, mentioning your house number is a must, okay? House number 91, example, if you have your flat number, if you're living in a big building, even if the house number is 91, the postman will find it difficult to deliver your letter to your house unless you mention your flat number or your room number. Or if you have the name of a house, there are people with names of houses, so you can always mention the name of your house also. If you have a name. Here, sometimes we do not have, not everyone has got names of houses pasted on their house, but if you happen to have one of that, you can always write that. You can write your name of your colony, that is Zion Colony. I've just mentioned it here. Zion Colony, Kohima, Nagaland, and PIN number is one thing that you should never forget. Even if you have written all the details or particulars of your address, unless you give your PIN code correctly, your letters are never going to reach you. No matter if you know your house number or not, even if you have given your house number, your flat number, your colony, the road or the street on which you live, your PIN code will always be needed if you want your letters to be delivered to you. Okay? Why we are writing this is for the other person to reply back, and when he replies back, he or she will be needing this address. That is the reason why we give our address very clearly. You might be wondering why you have to give your address when you are writing to someone. It is always good to give your address. It is not only good, but it is very, very important for you to give your address all the time, because if that person wants to write back, he needs it. And also it is important for the other person to know where you are writing the letter. If you are writing the letter, that means you will have some idea of the situation that you are in, and it will also be easier for him to understand what you are trying to convey, especially when you want to convey about the climatic conditions of your place, of your region. He or she will get to know an idea of where you live, and then it will be easy for him to relate to the letter. That is the first point. Yes, writer's address. The next one that you have to write is the date. Okay, date. When you write a date, you do not have to mention DATE in your letter again. I've given you so that you will understand. So when you are writing the date, always use the full form. Example, 20 November 2021. I repeat, 20 November 2021. I do not want you to use the word NOV, okay? I want you to use 20 November. Some of you may want to write 2011-21, but that might be a confusion, because in some parts people have the habit of using the month first and the date later, date in the middle. For us, we may want to use the date first and the month later, but that will bring a confusion for some people to understand whether you are mentioning the date first or the month first, because both ways are correct. Okay, so that is the reason why I would always recommend you to use the month, okay, the full form of the month when you are writing your date. And remember, do not write DATE when you are writing your letter. This is just for you to remember, okay? And then the third one that you have to write, I'm repeating, the third one that you have to write is the address of the person receiving the letter. The address of the person receiving the letter. Remember, when you are writing a formal letter, I repeat, when you are writing a formal letter, what do? You have to give the address of the receiver, but that does not mean his personal residence or his personal address. Because if you do so, the letter that is used only for an informal letter. If you're writing to the principal of your school, you cannot just write his address. If you know where he stays, it is, even if you know where he stays, you cannot use his personal address. It is official as we are writing a formal letter. You should always remember to know that you are writing an official letter and it should be his official address. If you're writing to one of your cousins living outside, you can use his house address. But when it comes to official letters, it should be the office address of the person who is receiving your letter. Okay? The principal, this is just an example. The principal government higher secondary school, Longlang, Nagaland. It should be Nagaland, okay, not Kohima. So, example, if you have given this address, I want you to know that it is always important for you to give the correct official address of that person. Now let's come to the salutation. What is meant by salutation? Salutation or greetings, okay? We call it salutation or greetings. It can be used like dear sir or madam, because if it is a gentleman, you have to use sir. If it is a lady, you have to use the word madam, isn't it? So always make sure, if you know the person, and if you know the gender of the person, you can make use of that, sir or madam, depending on their gender. That is salutation. You can even use the word dear. Some of you may be wondering whether you can use the word dear in an official letter. Okay? And the next will be the subject. You can mention the subject of the letter. In some letters, you may not need a subject, but especially when it comes to a formal letter, what you will need is you have to give a proper subject. Example, if you would want to ask leave for half day, okay, maybe you went to school and then you feel that you are not feeling very healthy that day, you want to go back home because you're feeling sick, so it would be like requesting for half day leave or application for seeking half day leave. Those can be some subjects that you are writing, and the next thing will be the body of the letter. I repeat, the next thing would be the body of the letter. Whenever you are writing a formal letter, what I want you to remember is your language has to be formal and polite. Even if you want to write a complaint letter, maybe you are writing a complaint letter because the electricity is very irregular in your locality, in your village, in your colony, or in your town. Even if the reason is about complaining and you are pouring out your frustrations, it has to be given in a very polite manner. You cannot just use words which are not very decent for you. Okay? You should always make sure that you use decent words, because in that way, your letter becomes appropriate. People may not accept your letter if you are using vulgar words or if you are using harsh words to a person. In the body, you can further subdivide the body of the letter into 2 or 3 or even more than that. Okay? The first should be the introduction, and then the second paragraph can be your reason, stating your reason, and the third can be your request. We use words like I therefore request you to kindly grant me leave. Example, if you're asking for a leave, or I therefore request you to kindly look into the matter. Okay, if you're writing a complaint letter and do the necessary or take necessary actions, those are some words that you can use. And then the last one is closing the letter and the signatures. We call it the subscription. Okay, you can use yours affectionately or faithfully. Yours affectionately can also be used depending on the letter, or yours faithfully. And then you can give your name. Always give your signature above your name with that date, okay? Your date on your signature is very important, because even if you give a signature without a date is even considered invalid. So even if you have written the letter very well, you don't give your proper name or you don't give your signature with date, that will become invalid. So this is what I've prepared for today. I'm sure you all have understood something from this letter writing. And when it comes to the marking system, we know that letter writing carries a good lot of marks. It can be around 6 to 8 marks sometimes, depending on your teachers. Most of the time, your letter will carry 7 marks, okay? So this is what I want all of you to be aware of. And with this, we have come to the end of our class for today. Thank you so much for listening to me patiently. We will see you in the next class with another topic.